Yeah, this is not live.
You better bring him his gavel.
Well, that's right. I might need it for this thing. Yeah, we did read it. Yeah.
Okay.
Where's Sage?
That's pretty good.
Nice.
Said he was coming.
Okay. Thanks for
He's
introducing yourself.
doing his techie thing, isn't he, Ben?
Oh, yeah.
Steve.
Brian.
So they're like,
Yeah.
Here or there? Over here.
Oh, yeah, this is next.
Oh, God.
Okay, we're going to call the joint meeting of the Rochester City Council and the Rochester Planning Commission to order. Madam Clerk, the roll.
Okay, City Council, Mayor Vixen,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Salvia,
here.
Council Members Albrecht,
Here.
Gould,
Here.
Peterson,
Here.
Sage,
Here.
Trent,
Here.
Planning Commission, Chair McGee,
Here.
Vice Chair Hauser,
Here.
Members Gasson,
Here.
Kenziak,
Here.
King,
Here.
Lord, and Stone.
Here. So we have a quorum. So I think the first thing we're gonna do is we're all gonna stand for the Pledge of Allegiance up there. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. This is the first one of these we've had in a long, long time. This is going to be a casual meeting where we're just going to have information for the audience. There's not going to be any decisions made. We're not voting on anything. This is just informational to get us ready for some things that are upcoming and that we know are coming. First, I think it'd be a good idea that I think we all know each other, but maybe if we just go around the room real quickly and kind of introduce yourself and just maybe say what you do for a living. So I'm Stuart Bixson. I'm a high school economics and government teacher, and I'm on the City Council and the Planning Commission.
Dennis McGee from the Planning Commission, and I don't do a darn thing.
Yeah.
I used to. I
City
did.
manager.
City manager, police chief, et cetera, so.
Councilmember Steve Sage.
Steve Sage, I'm a national sales manager for an electric vehicle company here in
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you. I'm a real estate broker, owner, also do mortgages and title.
Mayor
Nancy
Pro Tem Salvia. Yeah, go
Nancy
ahead.
Salvia, Merrill Lynch Financial Advisor.
Well, I'll need some help from you guys.
Yeah.
After
all
last
of you
year,
are on there.
everybody needs help.
David Gasson with the Planning Commission, and I'm an architect in my work life.
Mark Albrecht, I'm on City Council, and I have my own human resource consulting practice.
Marilyn Trent, I'm on City Council, and I own a small business in downtown Rochester that's a marketing company, and if you need help planting a pollinator garden to save the monarch butterfly, that's my other job.
Christian.
Hi, Christian Hauser. I'm an attorney and licensed residential builder specializing in construction law.
Hi, my name is Rich Kenchuk. I'm retired. Previously, I owned a small business, and I also been involved with our homeowners association going on my 14th year.
Which step?
Stony Creek Ridge.
There you go.
Sarah King, I'm a Planning Commission member. I joined in May of 2020. I'm a commercial lender, working with mid-sized businesses at JP Morgan Chase.
Good evening, Matt Stone. Been with Planning Commission 5 or 6 years. My day job, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for a construction company that builds industrial and commercial buildings across the United States.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Gould. I'm on Rochester City Council. I'm professor and department chair of foundational medical studies at Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine.
All right. And then we have our city manager, so we're going to turn it over to Nick, who then is, I think, going to turn it over to Vidya. And kind of, Nick, you want to give us a kind of synopsis of what we're going to cover?
Absolutely. So
Happy New Year to my planning commissioners. Just saw my city council on Saturday. We had a great meeting, planning commission, so you know that we did our kickoff for our budget prep season. Right? So Anthony Marcy came, we spent 3.5 hours, 4 hours together talking about where we're at, where we've been, where we're at, where we're going. And that was the whole purpose. And that's kind of the next evolution of all of us together is what we're doing here tonight. So I appreciate the residents showing up. I know they're interested in things. We're not talking about sites. We're not talking about zoning districts. We're not talking about any of that tonight. Tonight's about process. So we've all talked about it off and on during other meetings that you're wondering why our staff are trying to get certain things done. So, and how we're gonna do it. We thought the best way to do it is the decision makers should be in the room at the same time, hear the same thing from the same staff that you're gonna hear for a while. We have professionals from McKenna, our planning folks, city council. You don't get to interact with John and Vinnie as much as planning commission does. You certainly know them for a long time. Patrick, you're gonna hear from Patrick. Patrick's got 57,000 years of experience. So we're really happy to have Patrick with us. And he's gonna kind of lead in to the whole concept of what we're trying to do. And really, what he wrote up there is the key, is we've now adopted a master plan, right? So it's a tool. And it just happened. We're not proud of this or not proud of this. As we dug into it, and when Patrick came on board, it's sloppy. I'm just gonna tell you that. So we're not real comfortable with how it's written. We know we have to get it from here, which was adopted. Everybody had to look at it, both bodies. Overall, if you look at it, it looks really nice and clean. When you dig into it, it's sloppy. I'll just say that. And we had consultants that were doing it. We had staff overseeing it. We're gonna tighten it up. That's our goal, so we can live with it, so the developers can live with it, so staff can live with it, certainly so McKenna can live with it. They did not do this go around. They did our 2014 process, which got us up to ready to go with new zoning districts, et cetera, and we never got there. For various reasons, we never got there. We want to get there, all right? So it's got modifications to it. We're gonna go through that process, and John and Vidya, we're gonna do that. We're gonna start with Patrick. He's gonna run through a few slides with you on what we want to do to accomplish to get, the ultimate goal is to get a zoning ordinance that matches the master plan districts. And then we're going to talk about the process to get that done. And then once you have that done, and you have your districts and your ordinance, how do you implement that, which is called for in the master plan. It says, how do you have somebody ask for rezoning on a property? We're going to make sure everybody knows exactly why we're doing it. This isn't, there's state law that guides us. This isn't, I was just pulling up a procedure every single time. It's pretty cut and dry in the Zoning and Enabling Act, and we're gonna let you make sure that you're all on the same page as we move forward to do this. We know we've got big developments coming back in. We've had a little bit of a lull with COVID, but they're here on their doorsteps. We wanna make sure we're all prepared so that we treat them with respect, and then the residents know that we have their back, and we're protecting the existing community. And we're gonna look at how the master plan falls into that, and then what these requests for different developments around town, how they fit into that plan also. So turn it over to Patrick, and he's gonna give you some information.
All right, thank you, Nick. I'm gonna try not to kill too much oxygen in the room tonight, so we'll make this as quick as possible. For the most part, I just want to talk in general about planning law, and how we got where we are today, and in some cases almost by mistake. The city of New York really in the United States kind of was at the beginning of the zoning acts and the zoning law. Ohio set forth a huge case with this Amber Realty versus Village of Euclid, which many argue might have been one of the first big planning mistakes, whereby Amber Realty owned a 60-acre piece of property, hired all these experts to come in and help them write a plan similar to how New York addressed their situation. They got done with that, and the Village of Euclid said, all right, we don't want to be anything like our neighbors. We want to end the industrial spread. So the plan said no more industrial along, I think it was Euclid Avenue, believe it or not. And they such wrote it up in their plan. Amber Realty at the time was just your normal realty office. There was no zoning at the time, pretty much anywhere. So they were a little bit shocked when they found out, hey, our industrial piece of property that we've been holding on to for so many years at 60 acres can't be used for industrial uses anymore. It's now been rezoned into 3 different zonings with different rights and different setbacks, making it a little bit difficult to utilize, but as they proved to the Supreme Court, not impossible. So they went through their case, and Amber Realty lost in the Supreme Court to the Village of Euclid, and it established a bigger foundation for zoning based on a plan. The idea being that we're not just zoning for political purposes to cause any type of arbitrary or capricious decision-making that, believe it or not, used to happen in politics. So the case ended up boosting planning and zoning to a great extent. And that was 1926, roughly. By 1940, the war was moving along, and all of the U.S. manufacturers were coming in saying, we need property to build. Well, Fisher Body came into the Village of Euclid and said, this 60 acres is perfect for us to put a plant, and we need room for 5,000 workers. All of a sudden, it didn't seem that bad to do industrial there. So they allowed Fisher Body to come in, put the plant in, and thus it became industrial anyway, less than 20 years later. GM ended up buying Fisher. Fisher went out of business for the most part, sold most of their holdings, and the building itself, which was extremely large, ended up breaking up into several different automotive users, and today there's a real reuse issue with regard to the building because of the size of it and the expense of operating it. So all that being said, planners are not always right, other than yours truly. And basically what this case did, though, it really did cement the fact that we can't have a zoning ordinance without having a master plan. And the master plan can't just be, hey, we want this to be office, or we want this to be commercial, or we want this to be industrial. There has to be some meaning behind all of the designations and why they get there and how they get there. The 30 years or so that I've been writing master plans and zoning ordinances and working either for developers or for municipalities as a professional witness, what I've found out was, in most cases, the more generalized the plan, probably the better the plan. So while we can point out, this is what we want residential, we don't want this to be a high-intense area, the real idea is to put that into more general statements, sharing why is it important to have these distinctions in terms of the density, why is it important to have these other distinctions, is it environmental, is it view shed, what exactly is the argument, and then to carry forward with creating zoning districts that embrace those goals and objectives. And that's where we are today. We have a master plan that I think was a lot of work put into it. To a large extent, I think it took the 2014 plan that was already written by McKenna and Associates and built on it, maybe to a specificity that goes, in my opinion, past what a master plan probably should, and can get you in the long run into trouble, particularly because in this plan, if you read it, there are so many continual, we can have 100% coverage in this district. However, there has to be a 10-foot setback off of the front lot line. Well, if you're going to have a 10-foot setback off the front lot line, you can't have 100% coverage. It's mathematically impossible, and even a dumb Irishman like me could figure that one out. So I think there's enough of those that they're self-explanatory and can still work in with the goals and objectives in terms of not hurting the intent of providing a zoning district, as long as we recognize them as we create those districts. But I'm going to turn it over to Vidya, who can talk about the actual process. I think all of you have been involved in a rezoning process at one point in time, and it's really not a complicated process. The decisions aren't always easy, but we talk about traffic a lot too, and I want to just hit this very generally because we constantly hearing, we can't have traffic on the south side, we can't have traffic on the north side. Since 2000, we've had 55,607 net housing units added to surrounding communities. Many of these people come to downtown Rochester for entertainment, dinner, just to walk around. I'm guilty of that myself. And or to work. So we are going to get the traffic. Oakland Township is now growing at a much higher rate than I ever anticipated, even 10 years ago. Rochester Hills is booming right now. Shelby Township is pretty much exploding. And Macomb Township, which I used to work at, they were doing 2,000 permits a year back then. They're down to about 1,000 permits a year. And just still a whole lot of residential units going in per year. Trying to deal with that and absorb all of the impacts of those with relatively low tax coming in for residential units. So I just wanted to share this number with you because we can easily look at things in a magnifying way, but sometimes we do need to look at things in a much broader scope. So that's it from me. I'm going to turn it over to Vidya, and she can talk about the process.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Planning Commission and City Council. Most of you do know me. Those of you who don't, my name is Vidya Krishnan. I'm a senior principal planner at McKenna, and I've had the pleasure of serving as your planning consultant from October of 2010. I was on the body when we wrote the 2014 master plan. I sure can. I didn't want anybody to get a crick in their neck, but I shall sure go ahead.
I'll just
Is
turn.
that up to the middle? Is that
Very
possible or
thoughtful,
no?
but-
It's not easily possible.
So, sorry, if you can hear me, that's good. So the 2014 master plan was written, and like Nick summarized at the beginning, it was a plan that took a lot of work before it was adopted and went into place. However, for various reasons, including Rochester actually getting a whole bunch of new projects coming in, the master plan implementation process did not take off till at least 2 or 3 years after that. By which time, we were already into the 5 years when the master plan is supposed to be revisited under state statute. State statute says that every 5 years, you shall revisit your master plan. You can either adopt the master plan as it is already written. If you want to tweak it, you can, or you can completely rewrite your master plan. So the 2014 master plan, the implementation schedule started only in late 2016. And the Planning Commission worked meticulously and tediously through multiple districts that the new master plan had envisioned. Stepping back a bit, just adding to what Patrick said, there are 2 key guiding documents for any municipality. One is your master plan, and the second is your zoning ordinance. The master plan is a vision for the community for the next 10 to 20 years. It's only a vision. Visions can change. But the zoning ordinance is the law. It must be followed. Your master plan can say, this is what we ideally see Rochester being in 10 years. But things change in 10 years. As if the pandemic has shown us nothing, it has shown us that nothing is for certain. Things change overnight. And so a vision can also change. However, the regulations that you adopt in your zoning ordinance are the ones by which you have to abide. So the 2022 master plan was written by another consultant, and we were tasked with trying to see how the 2022 master plan can be effectively implemented. When the 2014 master plan was written, as I mentioned, we envisioned several new zoning districts. The Planning Commission worked on regulations, detailed written regulations for what is the intent of a district, what is the purpose of it, what are the principal permitted uses, what would be the special land uses or the conditional land uses, or how we call it in Rochester, special exception uses. And then it set forth what the developmental standards will be. The Planning Commission adopted regulations for the Rivers Edge District, Mixed Use District, Downtown Edge 1, Downtown Edge 2, the Transition District, the Light Manufacturing Industrial Office Service District, and the Office Technology Research District. We went through and adopted at least 7 or 8 different district texts. All of those were sent to City Council, and City Council also passed all of those regulations. However, it is my understanding those regulations do not actually exist in our zoning ordinance today because under state statute, there is a certain requirement once City Council acts on it that it needs to be published or set forth in the rules within a certain period of time. Due to various transitions in the city, that was not done, so those districts still exist on paper, but they are not part of your zoning ordinance at this time. So for all means and purposes, all the districts that the Planning Commission wrote in detail and that the City Council heard are still only on paper. The last 3 districts that we worked on were the residential districts. We worked on the 2-family residential district, and we worked on a district called mixed residential, which was an intermix between multiple family 1 and multiple family 2 districts. Those regulations were reviewed and written in detail by the Planning Commission. However, when they reached City Council tabled it because it had already hit your 5-year milestone for revisiting your master plan. Then your new master plan process got started, and all the districts stayed where they were. So once your new master plan was adopted, we had an opportunity to take the new master plan that was adopted for the city, compare it with your zoning ordinance, and compare it with the 2014 master plan. As Patrick correctly said, the 2022 master plan picked up the 2014 master plan and built upon its foundation. So when we compared the districts, we put together a table where we said, these are the districts that were envisioned in your 2014 plan. These are the districts in your 2022 plan. This is what it translates to. And for the most part, almost 90% of the districts are exactly the same with its regulations. So where that brings us is that you're not starting from scratch in attempting to implement the 2022 master plan. You have already done a tremendous amount of work to get it to that point. I know there were some members of the Planning Commission who were not part of writing of all those districts, and also some members of council. But I'm sure there are some members here who remember how many meetings it took to write the details of each and every one of the districts before it was finalized. Once your districts are there in your zoning ordinance, so the process to implement your 2022 master plan would be to pick those districts back up, make sure they match what is in your 2022 master plan, go through the same process again. It has to go back before Planning Commission for a public hearing. If the Planning Commission recommends it, it goes back before City Council. City Council holds another public hearing, and if the council is satisfied, the district is adopted and it is published. Once it's published in your zoning ordinance, it becomes part of your zoning ordinance, but nobody can really build according to it, but you really don't have those zoning districts on your zoning map. For instance, in your zoning map, you just have a central business district, a CBD. But your master plan envisions Downtown 1, Downtown Edge 2, and a transition district. That is what they were called in the 2014 master plan, and in your 2022 master plan, they are merely called Downtown Interface, which is one and the same. So if somebody now wants to build, they will still have to build under the CBD regulations because there is simply nothing in your zoning ordinance for Downtown Edge 1 or Downtown Edge 2 or the transition district. Even if you adopt those districts, there is nothing in your zoning map. So the only way somebody can develop according to your master plan at this time they pretty much have to follow what is there in the 2022 plan, but you don't have the districts. So they cannot rezone themselves either. So you're technically stuck in no man's zone, no man's land right now. You have the districts in your master plan, you have the text, but the text have not been adopted into your zoning ordinance. So if a property owner, for example, a property owner owns property in what is envisioned as your reverse edge district, which, just for example, I'm just pulling it out, the cement patch plant under the bridge. That was called the reverse edge district. It right now is zoned industrial. And by right, it permits warehouses and all heavy industrial uses. I'm sure that is not what Rochester wants to see on that parcel. In the master plan, it is envisioned as reverse edge district. The reverse edge districts allows for a mix of various uses, taking into account the fact that that site actually abuts the Clinton River. It has got the trail over there, and you also have the 100-year floodplain and the floodway in the area. So if somebody wants to come and develop that parcel at this time, they can only develop it as an industrial parcel. They cannot rezone it to the reverse edge district because you have no reverse edge district in your zoning ordinance. So the only tool available at this time is something which I know many members do not like hearing, is your special projects boundary. Your special projects is a unique tool to the city of Rochester, which allows a developer to propose a project before you that, while not being allowed in the underlying zoning district, the public benefit that the project provides the city furthers the goals and the visions of the city. So it is a tall order to qualify to be a special project. When the last master plan was done, I'm sure Mayor Bixson and Chairman McGee correct me, the whole goal was when the master plan is done, people would not need to come before and ask for special projects designation. They would just build according to the zoning regulations, which would set forth the standards, so that you're not reviewing each project separately. The special projects boundary is still there today on our zoning map. So if a developer approaches you today to develop the cement batch plant, there are only two options. Either they put in an industrial use by right or by special exception, which is currently part of your zoning ordinance, or they ask for a special project designation, which means pretty much they can put any use in there, and they will have to demonstrate public benefit of the project and also evaluate themselves with the sustainability worksheet. A few years ago, the Planning Commission was very concerned that all of these special projects are just coming in, and there is no benchmark for evaluating public benefit. I mean, is a heated sidewalk a public benefit, or is one project being asked to do 10,000 feet of a trail? Are they both equitable? Are we treating all the special projects fairly and in the same way? A result of that question was the creation of a unique document for the city of Rochester, which is called your sustainability plan. It's got a sustainable Rochester worksheet in it. That worksheet has got 5 indicators. They are environmental indicators, housing, taxation, I believe, education, downtown, traffic. And each project has to self-score, which will then be evaluated by the city. There are certain thresholds. There are base thresholds that they have to meet in order to get 1 point for each one of those indicators. There are total 20 indicators. The scoring is out of 20 points. And then there is a sliding scale rule. If you get points less than 8, the project is considered as non-sustainable, and the developer is sent away back to the drawing board. If the project scores between 8 and 14 points, it is deemed as a project the city may consider, provided the applicant goes and makes revisions to the project and comes back. If a project scores 15 or more points, the project is considered sustainable and thereby worthy of being considered as a special project. That is a pretty long and detailed process to follow. And when the master plan whole process went into place, the goal was to not have any projects go through the special projects approval process, rather have those districts with the design standards and the regulations in our zoning ordinance. So somebody picks up the zoning ordinance, they know I'm building a building in the reverse edge districts. These are the expectations for parking, setbacks, greenbelt, landscaping, trail amenities, preserving of the view shed, preserving of line of sight, not overwhelming the downtown. All that will be part of your zoning ordinance itself. Which brings us to the point we are at today in attempting to implement this zoning plan. we have two different options of how to go about doing it. I will have John explain what those two options are, and it will be up to the Planning Commission and the City Council to provide us with direction of how you would like to go about doing this. Both pathways have their own pros and have their own cons, and some might take longer, some might get done faster. It's up to this body, the combined group, to provide the city and us with direction on which step you would like to go by so that we can actually make your 2022 master plan an effective document that the city plans by. I will introduce my boss to you. This is John Jackson, the principal and owner of McKenna Associates, and John has a lifetime of experience in master plans, how they're adopted and how they're implemented into a zoning plan. So John will be able to guide you through what the process is, and I will step in as and how it is needed, and be happy to answer any questions you might have after that for discussion purposes.
Any questions for Vidya? Thank you, Vidya.
She's not going anywhere, so if you have questions, she'll be right here for sure. I think Vidya and Patrick and Nick all did a great job sort of laying the stage in terms of where we are and the work that's been done. And so, as Vidya pointed out, we have these zoning districts that have been drafted and need to be confirmed and hopefully put on the books. So then we have all these different districts. So the next question is, how do we apply them to the property here in Rochester? And you have a couple of different options. The state in the Zoning and Enabling Act lays out two different methods for doing this. The first option is that you could adopt a new zoning map that basically seeks to align the zoning with the adopted master plan and the districts. So you get to choose where you want the districts to go to match the master plan, and it obviously requires a public hearing, but it would basically be a city-initiated rezoning of individuals' properties. Okay, so one day, one night I go to bed and my property is zoned industrial. I wake up the next day after the planning or the city council meeting, and now it's River's Edge. Okay, I have obviously as a property owner I have a right to come to the planning commission and to the city council and say, you know, I'm not sure I like this. You know, would you reconsider it and things like that. There's a process. You know, like I said, there's a public hearing at the planning commission. Planning commission considers it, makes a recommendation to the city council. City council ultimately makes the decision. And this approach has been done by many, many municipalities that want to do two things primarily. One is to encourage the type of development that's envisioned in the master plan. So they want to remove the barriers. So if I'm a property owner, I don't have to go through the rezoning process myself in order to get what the city wants. Okay, so I don't have to go through that process. The city has removed that rezoning barrier for me. All right. The other reason that municipalities do that is to protect them from having development that's inconsistent with the master plan. I go back to Vidya's example where you have the cement plant that's there, currently zoned industrial, and if the city doesn't take a proactive approach to rezone that property to River's Edge District, instead of getting a mixed-use development that's sensitive to its location on the Clinton River, you could get continued industrial development on that site. They could invest in additional industrial uses on that property, making it less and less likely that it would convert to the type of mixed-use development that you envision there. So that's two of the main reasons why cities do that approach of going out and adopting a map that basically a zoning map that reflects the type of development that they want to get. The other approach is to allow it to happen organically. That is, allowing property owners, again, going back to the cement place, if they get a developer that wants to do a mixed-use development, they could come in and apply for a rezoning. In that case, it's relatively the same process. They'd fill out an application, they'd say, we want to rezone our property. The planning commission would hold a public hearing. We would review it for them and say that it's consistent with the master plan. This rezoning to River's Edge is consistent with the master plan. And then planning commission would make a recommendation to city council, and city council would have the final decision-making on that rezoning. Obviously, that approach would take a lot longer to get to the point where all the property is zoned in alignment with the master plan, but it's definitely one approach to take. I would say there's sort of a variation of the first approach I mentioned. Instead of trying to get 100% alignment with the master plan, you might want to target strategically those properties that are most important to the achievement of the master plan, those that are most vulnerable to being developed in an inconsistent manner with the master plan, or removing the barriers to those that could have the best possible option of advancing the master plan. So instead of doing 100%, you could do a 75% version where you target those properties in the city that stand the best chance of achieving your master plan. So those are the choices. It's really either adopting a map, a zoning map in its entirety, doing a 75% version, more or less, I'm ballparking there, or allowing it to happen one property at a time. Obviously, the option where it happens one property at a time, that's sort of, it's allowing the property owners to drive the bus, sort of. They'll do it when they're ready to do it. They'll do it when they have a developer that's ready to do it. And the city is merely there to sort of facilitate it when they are ready to do it. So two different schools of thought in terms of how you can approach it, but both have been done by municipalities all over Michigan. So.
One of the things to add to what John said is, if we take the step where we wait till individual property owners approach the city to rezone, you will have to keep all the zoning districts that you currently have in your books and all the new districts that you have adopted. You're talking about having over
25 districts.
25 districts in your zoning ordinance, because you cannot eliminate any of the zoning districts because people still have a right to develop under that. Those that want to rezone can then rezone and develop it in consistency with the district that is envisioned by the master plan. In either one of the processes that John outlined, step one would be to get all of these districts on the book. That is critical, no matter which pathway you choose. Getting all of the zoning districts and the text associated with them onto the books is critical. And our recommendation to you would be the Planning Commission tackle these in groups of 3. The Planning Commission has worked really hard, and we will ensure that when the group of 3 districts, and the districts that we will bring before you would be compatible districts. For instance, if you take downtown, you will do the downtown interface. You'll do the central business district, downtown edge 1 and 2. So they are all districts that are tied to each other. You will do that as a cluster. Then you will adopt records for multiple family 1, multiple family 2, and the mixed residential, which are all one particular grouping. Then you would adopt the office technology research, the light industrial manufacturing districts. So compatible districts will come before the Planning Commission in groups. The Planning Commission can review those districts, recommend any changes that you want, and then schedule it for a public hearing. We will make sure to do all those changes in a timely manner so that it is sent before council with any further changes and it is adopted onto your books. That is the critical first step. Until the districts are on the books, your master plan document is really not usable at all.
So Lydia, what you're saying is we have to agree on the definition first of these districts. We haven't done that?
Yes. We did go through the whole process, but
we didn't approve them.
Yes.
For 2, we did all but 2.
You did all but the last 2.
Okay. And what were the 2?
Mixed residential and multiple family residential, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So until those definitions are done, Can then somebody come in and ask for a rezoning right now, or is that the two processes you talked about?
Until those new districts are in the books, somebody cannot come and ask for a rezoning, because if I own the cement batch plant and I approach you saying, I want to rezone my property to the Rivers Edge district in the master plan, okay? What are my standards? There is nothing in the zoning ordinance. What am I going to build to?
And that's the scenario that Vidya mentioned earlier. Without any other choices of those districts that we have, they ask for special projects designation.
But what if you're not in a special project?
Well, if you're not in a special project, then you don't have access to that.
They don't
That's
have
right.
that.
Then you can't build.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
Well, you can't build
Outside the scope of that
outside
zone.
what the scope
Right.
of what
Correct.
it is.
What is
Right.
zoned currently.
Right.
What if it's both?
Yeah, but.
Part's in a special project and part isn't.
You apply for a different zone, right? One of the existing zones.
Aren't we here to
The-
decide what zone it's gonna be?
The idea of if we had these districts available for rezoning, we could significantly reduce the number, if not eliminate the number of special projects being requested. That was, again, as Vidya pointed out, when we did the 2014 plan, the idea was to eliminate the reliance on the special projects and just create the districts consistent with the vision of mixed-use, higher-density development in appropriate locations in Rochester.
So just to understand, right now, obviously, cement plant, we're using that example, it's light industrial. So are you, it looks like you're recommending multifamily mixed residence, is that, because it's orange? I mean, if I'm following these.
I think it is this, it's.
Yeah, here it is.
This map is so tiny,
I
I'm
know,
sorry,
well, I
no glasses.
enlarged it, but here's, this is all light industrial, right over here on Second Street.
Marilyn, you got a question for all of us, so we can.
Well, okay, you
Yeah.
see this little dot over here? I'm just saying, if they, these are, I printed them out as large as I could, and I studied them closely.
You had
But-
two categories that had not yet been defined, and I had one as mixed residential. What was the other one?
I think multiple family residential.
Multiple family.
So
Multiple
it-
family and mixed residential, those two. I refer to it as Rivers Edge because Rivers Edge
Okay.
was what it was called in the 2014 master plan. It is probably called something different in this master plan, but that was just used as an example.
And I understand, but what I'm just clarifying is that even if it's not a special project, what you're saying is it's now being recommended as a mixed use, I'm sorry, multifamily, or
Is that what the?
apartments or something, and, which isn't a bad thing, I guess. Isn't that what master plans are supposed to do in zoning? I mean, right?
Yeah, so they're in the 2014 master plan, there showed specific location for the Rivers Edge district, and it was at that
Nick, you got the
location.
map, you can get up there.
Well, just to understand that it,
You have to have the maps.
So this is exactly what we're talking about. So Maryland wasn't part of this whole process.
So was I.
That's why we need to go back to the planning commission, back to city council to talk about the districts. We're not here tonight to talk about.
I get it,
the
I'm just trying to,
Right, it's the idea of, so I've been doing this for 45 years. When I came here, the PICA, the potential intensive change special project, was like the biggest godsend to any planner ever, for the city. The Royal Park Hotel got built on an industrial piece of land with one meeting, basically. It was, the developer came in, the city council.
That's not
It's
necessarily
not
a good
one,
thing.
Probably not.
it was a one process. It went, I'll tell you what, Romeo and Maine got done in technically one city. So Royal Park didn't take very long. That could have took a year. But you had that tool called a special project. There was former leaders of this community hated that word, thought it was, let's make a deal. It protected the city. You never had to say yes to a special project. It's a dream for the
Yeah,
planning
can
commission,
I get
you know, to try to, like Vidya described, to further what we want as a community through a special project. Councilwoman Salvia just said, not all of them were within PICAs. You could look at, make more, I call them PICAs now, they were special projects back then. If you had the right districts that we know are under pressure for development right now, there's basically 6 of them.
Nick, the whole east side of the city was developed under a special project.
Right, if you look at the zoning, right, all the condos and everything, those aren't allowed in any zoning ordinance. I don't see why everybody was afraid of this special project because it worked out incredibly well
And
for
the city got what it wanted out of that agreement.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's
So
the
are we-
third option is.
It's still very
get
unclear to
response.
me on how to get from point A to point B. What I heard tonight is basically, we're back before the last version of the master plan that was approved. So how do we get from where we're at today
Biddy,
to
how
where we
many
want to go to?
districts do we have to revisit?
There's 18 in the 2014 master plan.
How many new ones?
Some of
do we
them
have to
overlap, like the
No, right,
R1 through
correct.
R5, all
Yep.
those districts are not changing. None of the single-family residential districts are changing. So I would say overall, you would be adopting at least 11 new districts. So, answering Member Salvia's question, the steps would be, first is to adopt regulations for each of the districts in your 2022 master plan. And the districts are not two off your 2014 master plan. So getting the text before the Planning Commission is not going to be that difficult. Once those districts are on the book, the next step would be one of the three pathways. Either citywide rezoning is sometimes done, but I'm not sure it'll be well received. Like John said, you sleep one night with one zoning and next day morning wake up, you may like it because it might make your property more valuable, you may not like it. And that citywide rezoning can have its own complications. The other option would be picking up all the developmentally pressured sites, the sites that you know that are currently zoned in a manner that is not what you want to see over there. You don't want to see industrial development on the Mill Street property, which is all zoned industrial. You don't want to see heavy industrial along the cement batch plant site. Those are the developmentally pressured properties. So you would pick up all the developmentally pressured properties and adopt those districts alone. The city would initiate the rezoning and rezone them so that developers can develop according to your master plan vision and not according to what the current zoning is, which is not desirable. And then rest of the parcels can be left for individual property owners to approach the city if and when they want.
93, I think it's page 93, Patrick.
Yeah.
Rich, you had a question?
Actually, I've got three, so
You're only allowed two.
I apologize if I'm getting too far detailed here, but we'll start with the easiest one. You're talking about adopting these new districts right away. At some point, will the old districts be retired?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, next question. Using the river's edge as the example, if somebody wanted to restart that cement factory, under the current zoning, there's nothing that would stop them from doing so.
Correct.
Okay. And then the third question is, under the organic model, again, using that river's edge as an example, let's say that, developer comes in, they wants to do mixed development, multi-phase project, get the first phase done, and then for some reason they can't finish phase 2 or phase 3. Can another developer come in and then put another industrial plant right next to the residential area?
It would depend on how you'd rezone the whole parcel, then they
Yes.
could not do that.
Yeah, if the whole parcel is rezoned
Gotcha.
to the new designation, they could not do that. And I'm
protect
sorry, I keep saying River's Edge because I'm so familiar with
No.
writing that as my first district. In your new master
It's
plan,
not
that
in
is
there.
called
Right.
mixed
Yeah, it's
residential,
not in
I
there.
believe.
Right.
Yeah.
There it is. It's
Remember,
orange
next,
mixed
yeah.
residential.
It's interface. This right here?
Below the.
Right here?
John, yeah,
Oh.
below the river. That
Oh.
orange.
Yeah, the
Yeah, right
orange.
here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interface.
Councilman
Are
Gould
you
had
sure
a
the
question?
colors are?
Videos?
Interface.
Can I ask you a question? So
Yes, please.
you, thank you for your presentation. I think I understand a little bit better, but I feel like I'm still missing a decent chunk in my head. It sounds like there was a process underway. Master plan was accepted, the rezoning, the zones were being defined appropriately, and for some reason you alluded to a transition. We stopped too shy of finishing that. Why do we have to go so far back? Why can't we just start and do those two and proceed on what, or aren't we?
Unfortunately, all the districts that you had already completed, they went before council, And once council adopts them, they have to be published within 15 days in the newspaper for them to be effective under state law.
Right, but we could certainly use the same definitions. Why do we have to go back and redo
Oh,
everything?
we can use the same. I totally intend to recommend that, but I believe some of the members in the planning commission are new. I just assume they might want to look at it again. That's all. If they're happy with the districts,
So because there was a transition, some foot drag, we can reopen Pandora's box and dive back in and redefine.
That's a great way to
yeah,
describe.
I'm
That's what
happy
we'll
to
have.
bring the districts back before you
Oh, yeah.
at one meeting. Say there is one second, Commissioner King. Say there is a first meeting and we bring before you 3 of the districts, downtown interface district, Edge 1, Edge 2, and transition. We'll put together a PowerPoint presentation which will explain to you what your 2022 master plan includes and what is the district draft text that we had already drafted under this. And if you're happy, it will take just one meeting. Anyway, the planning commission hears everything one time and sets a public hearing. The next meeting, they would act on it and send it before city council. There will still be a 3 or a 4 step, 2 meetings at each stage to get through, but yes.
And this is just for the definitions.
Just for the district text itself.
Commissioner King.
I think, just to be clear too, the, working off of the 22 planning master plan, there's a slight difference from the prior one. Some of those may not, like, we don't have River's Edge, right?
Right. There are slight
But we can work
differences.
off of the language that was developed
Exactly.
there and apply it to the
Exactly.
area that it's now.
There are only a couple of districts in your 2022 master plan that are significantly different, or that we will have to revisit and rewrite. But most of them are almost 95% in alignment with what was written previously.
Okay,
Oh.
Councilmember Trent and then Chairman McGee.
Yeah, I mean, just an overall question. So you have this master plan, and when you're looking at a total number of people who can live in the city, do you have like, okay, now we have 13,000. When you're looking at making these zones, are you thinking of numbers? Because in this thing, we see we cannot control total traffic. I mean, how many people can, fit in this town? Are you going to go 20,000, 25,000? I mean, when we're looking at this zoning, I'm thinking specifics, and maybe specificity isn't what you want us to do, but trying to understand, like, how many units, how many people? Because right now, we get into the weeds now with a specific project, Solaronics, they call it, and we're, like, looking at, possible rezoning of 108 units or 88 units. And my overall question is, are there like real numbers attached to this? So when these are individual projects come to us that we're saying, okay, we've reached 20,000 people and, 10,000 more units and we're done.
Well, so the master plan sort of shows the long-term development, and it generally anticipates that it's going to result in more people living here. And so it anticipates that. When you start to get into the specifics of an individual development, that's when you start talking about, well, what kind of changes to our existing transportation system do we have to tweak in terms of light timing or turn lanes or, additional road capacity. So it's the specific changes to the system. It's not, well, we can't allow that many people.
I got it.
Yes, we anticipated this number of people. This is great. It's just what we wanted. So now we have to make sure all the systems can support that. And that's also why we have the sustainability plan. So when a project comes in like that, we look at all of the systems, the environmental systems, the social systems, the infrastructure systems, to make sure that the project is making the necessary improvements that they need to make in order to support that new development.
It's a double-edged sword. Rochester is such a desirable community to live in. Everybody wants to come and live here. So therein lies the challenge. The development ends up being market-driven because this is a great community it's got great schools. You have one of the best downtowns in the state, so young families, people who age in place. This is just such a desirable community, and that is the pressure that drives the development. And like John says, we can't say, we think Rochester right now has got a population of, I'm just throwing out a number, 14,000 people. we think this is perfect, nobody else needs to come in here.
Well,
That's a
what
little
I was
difficult
just-
to say.
That's what I wanted to understand, because on page 40, it says the city is nearly fully developed compared to the neighboring cities and townships. That is a true indicator of how careful new development has to be implemented. And I feel like that's where we at, is this careful spot here. And then you said we're a small area on page 40. It's nearly fully developed compared to the larger undeveloped townships, albeit that's why they get to have more units than we do, and and we have a high-value residential properties, and it's recommended that the city maintain its current tax revenue per acre, which is $3,618 per acre, and it's the highest by far in the area. So I thought I would throw that out there as I read.
So those are great points, and I think if you look at the plan, one thing that it definitely does is it aggressively seeks to preserve the existing single-family character of the community.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So when we talk about new development coming in, we're not talking about replacing single-family. What we're talking about, by and large, is repurposing currently underutilized sites, sites that don't contribute to the value of the community, that don't offer appropriate development along the Clinton River or other underutilized areas. Like I'm looking at the east side here of downtown, where there's opportunities to accommodate that redevelopment. So yeah, you're fully built out, so it's all going to be redevelopment of hopefully underutilized sites that aren't contributing to the character of the community.
That was very helpful. That's what it looked like you were doing.
Chairman McGee and then Mayor Pro Tem Selby.
I was just going to point out a demographer such as a SEMCOG or whatever it's called now could project the maximum here. It would be based on the master plan. They would look at the areas that could be mixed use or whatever the case may be, and they would know approximately per acre what we could build on that property.
We actually did that. We had to do that when we did our sanitary sewer upgrade. We have a number, there's 1,500 units our system can take. So 1,500 times 1.8 people per unit, 3,000 more people, you're tapped out. That's Suave, Overlook, O'Sherry, the cement plant, and that was not Randazzo at the time. So we know it's about 2,000 units based on density and the underlying zone.
But for example, if somebody came in and said, I've assembled 10 of the parcels on South Street, and I'm gonna put in a 300-unit apartment complex, the chief would say right away, the utilities are not in place, and you cannot do that, because the utilities in South Street cannot support that. We don't have the water and sewer capacity. If he wants to pay for it, we might talk about it.
Right, exactly, that's right.
Now we have everybody.
With 300 units, with 300 additional units.
This is Eric Lord, our final member of the Planning Commission. Evening, everybody.
Welcome.
And Eric is a civil engineer, by the way, so we always get our techie questions.
Oh, good, we need them.
Introduced ourselves.
I have a general process question. So let's say we go through this whole process, we approved all the districts, the maps, we file it with the state, it's published. Perfect. The next day, we say, there's an error here on the map, or the error that Patrick referenced, that is mathematically impossible to execute that ordinance. What is the process to fix that? Do you have to wait till the next time you go through that?
No.
What's the process?
No, you can amend it any day any day. You
It
can
could be-
amend it. It requires going to the
It'll
planning
take some months,
commission.
though, Nancy, because you gotta have the public hearings again. and-
So it would be an
So,
amendment of
but it
the
could be
ordinance
done.
and the map?
No,
No, just the
No.
ordinance.
well, hang on a second. We're getting confused here.
Okay.
Are you talking about the zoning map or the master plan?
We've approved the whole thing, and there's a problem on the map, and there's a problem in the ordinance. Both.
Okay, then it would require an amendment to the ordinance, both to the map and to the text, possibly. And that usually takes about, I'd say 60-day process, because you have to have a public hearing at the planning commission.
Yeah,
Okay?
more than that, so two
Uh,
public hearings. Planning
public
commission and then council, right?
Council doesn't, by state, doesn't require a public
Okay.
hearing. So it would be a public hearing, 15-day notice prior to the public hearing at the planning commission. And then it would be a recommendation to city council, who would have an introduction and first reading at one meeting, and then at the subsequent meeting, they'd have the second reading and adoption. And then it'd have to be published, 15 days after that.
90 days.
90 days, that's what I heard. I heard 90 days.
Chairman McGee?
I was on the planning commission when
No.
we went through these districts. I just want to tell everybody not to be intimidated by this. These were not difficult things. Vidya and John had laid them out spectacularly clear. The process went very well. I think we handled them in one meeting each time. Those were spread out quite a bit, because I think you were actually writing them as we were going through back then, but now the work is primarily done. I doubt very much if you're gonna feel the need to change much, because I think the planners adapted what you wrote and put it in the 22 master plan, a lot of it. So it's not gonna be an intimidating process.
I believe the planning commission and the city council took about 2.25 years to get through all those districts.
Yeah.
So a lot of work went into writing this.
Yeah.
2.25. We went through some of the districts as many as 6 to 7 meetings.
Yeah, Dennis, you
Every
forget,
tiny
it
detail
took
was fine-tuned.
6 or
It
7
took a
in
long
one
time,
district.
but it's
For one
done, and
district.
it's not gonna have to be redone.
Yeah, everything does not have to be redone, which is why I suggested we don't bring them one at a time. We can bring them in groupings,
Right.
and we will bring the board and the council up to speed on what each district means, what the requirements are, and what the design recommendations are. So it's not starting, you're not starting reinventing the wheel.
Can I say this though, but the scary reality of that is there's different people on the planning commission. Look at Marilyn right now. Maybe she doesn't think that she wants 3,000 people living in the town. So, and that's the decision maker. You all are the decision makers. You could make this start over, trash the whole thing and say, I don't even want any of these districts, and just live with what you have and have peanuts. So staff's not taking for granted. This is automatically, these are different folks sitting around this table than there were in 2014. Different thought process, different world right now. So we're taking it very serious. We don't want to have to do what Mayor Pro Tem said, start this, get it where we think we have it, and do it again. You can't. Patrick's read through this thing for months, and we've got all the crisscross bad math things on paper. We can fix that. That's the easy part. But if you philosophically decide, we don't want any more cars on Second Street ever, you're gonna have to not adopt these districts, because it's gonna allow them if they're done. So it's easy, but not easy.
Sarah?
Oh, one more question, just to be clear on the process. So once we get through, going through each of the, so new zoning ordinances, and we adopt the text and it gets published, and we haven't yet, it would be a separate process then to change the zoning map, right? So even before we get to decide whether or not we're going 100%, 75, or, as they come to us, if somebody comes to us before we've adopted the zoning map, the tools are there, they can then request one of those ordinances.
Yeah,
Yes,
that would
okay.
be the organic process, basically, yeah.
That
While
concern.
it takes us time to adopt the whole zoning map, they might decide, I don't want to wait till the city gets through this process. I would
Right.
like my parcel rezoned, the district is
Right.
there.
And that-
Organic.
We like that, that's organic, but it's not that much longer, because every developer knows there's a process to get through rezoning. It takes them 6 months, whatever. That's clean, and then you don't have to take a chance on, looking at the entire city. You pick parcels, if they make sense with the master plan, with the text you wrote, you can handle them. You can handle them way quicker, so.
Mr. Stone?
Yeah, thank you. So you said there were two paths forward. One was adopting a new zoning map, the other was letting things happen organically. With the adopting a new zoning map, you'd mentioned that some people might lose property value based on how this thing flips. What are the risks do we open up to ourselves in the city if we adopt the new zoning map?
Well, I'm not sure I said they lose value. I think by and large, most of the rezonings would add a significant amount of up value to people's property.
From what I saw.
Yeah,
Excuse my-
but to answer your question, I think as long as you can demonstrate that there was a process that is based on a master plan that was well thought out and is clear and rational, I think the city would be in good shape, in a good position legally.
We didn't take too many things out of any of the existing districts. We put things in. There were no such thing as nail salons when the zoning ordinance was written. There weren't dog parks or dog indoor hotels. So we tried to bring it up to date as much as we could. We did that again in '22.
Plus the other thing is, let's take the River's Edge cement analogy again. So, I'm the cement guy, I wake up the next day, my property is zoned River's Edge, doesn't allow industrial uses, but I'm protected by non-conforming provisions in the zoning ordinance that would allow me to continue to use the property in its current form and operation. I couldn't expand it. If for some reason it was destroyed or burnt down or something, I couldn't rebuild it. So I would be able to continue to operate it though. So it wouldn't have the effect of going in and making people, you know, put the closed for business sign up on their property or anything like that.
I think if the zoning map adoption follows what you have adopted in your master plan, which has once again followed the process as set forth by state law, you're legally protected.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, question, did this plan not go to Oakland County?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Master plan,
yeah, the
We
master
actually had a
plan
couple
went to.
changes to back up.
Okay, okay,
We did that,
okay.
yes,
I
absolutely.
want to make sure that, yeah,
And the
that piece
surrounding
wasn't.
communities
Yeah,
too.
So-
the master plan.
Right, goes
has been
there.
accepted.
Right, okay, no, that's fine. I just
Well-
wanted to
53-day
make sure.
distribution period would have sent it to Oakland County, to all of the
Shall be-
stakeholders.
Right, and I
We did
wanted
that.
to make sure that that piece did get done, because we were told that it had been done.
It
That's
did.
all, because of all this that seems like wasn't done. I wanted just to
Yeah, it was
make
done.
sure it was
That
clear,
was done.
okay.
Yep.
Marilyn?
So,
Yeah.
well, I wasn't done, but that's
I'm sorry.
okay.
No,
No, it's
go
okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
No,
No,
hold the
go
floor.
ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
hold the floor.
No, it's fine, go ahead, Marilyn.
Sorry.
I thought you were finished.
No, I wasn't, but that's fine, go ahead.
Are you going to come back to it then?
I probably will, yes.
ahead.
Go right-
Go
No,
ahead,
it's
Aaron.
fine, I'm not going to, just
All
talk,
right.
it's
Marilyn?
fine.
Okay, so just a quick question about, when you said 2,000 or 3,000 units, you do have is that a number then? You have, so right now,
It's not
there
hard to
is some hypothetical or maybe concrete semi-ballpark figure that this map with these new zoning is open to 2,000 to 3,000 units.
Turn it on each density, again, depending on which guide the zone, but at what the master plan costs, where you can calculate the density based on how many square feet you need of property per unit, how many units, depends on one bedrooms and twos and threes, but you can get to a number, that's what Dennis was talking about. SEMCOG does that all day long. We had to do that in
Well, it
order, when
seems
we
like
put the
you
sewer
would.
system in,
Right.
upgrade it, we needed to know what's our capacity. And really, that connector down on, between the river and Second Street.
Yeah.
That capped that area at 1,500 units. You can't, unless you made another pipe bigger to put the sanitary in, you can't get any more units.
So on
we
that
knew
side.
But that wasn't north on Solaronic site, and that wasn't overlooked. Those don't go into that
No,
district, so.
it's around Mill Street,
We-
right?
that's
Okay,
figured.
so that's 1,500, so the rest is maybe more than
Spread
that.
out, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question is this, so my concern basically is that we are making our plan to have more residential than any other type of incoming business for long-term tax dollar of business, okay? So I actually feel like having that special project option was actually, could be a better thing for us moving forward than zoning everything into some of these little zones. I've never, just so you all know, I've never voted for any of these little districts because I think it takes our opportunity out from having good development. And I say good development as in development that will bring a good tax dollar that is not just residential, okay? So because and if you think about it, that 3,000 people hypothetically, that's not all 3,000 people that are going to come in here at $1 million piece of property, okay? That's going to change and be diminished, and I think that the future, we don't know, okay? And I think that we are better served here, having a planning commission and a city council determine special projects in certain areas, instead of zoning us out. So I don't know, just going through this through the years, from back when we did the first one, and that, I see that we have zoned us out of bringing in better development instead of just residential development.
Does special projects go away if we accept it en masse, like we're talking about?
The proposed future land use plan map that was drawn by Beckett and Rader still has some areas in the special projects boundary. If you can see that green color neon dashed line, I believe some of the properties are still designated as special project boundaries.
Very small, these lines, so it's pretty much, all the areas we're talking about are still there. We have a couple that are really goofy, like the elevator site.
Yes.
Yeah.
This, and I'll give you an example. So this was our property, Sherry buys the land, looks to redevelop it. That line right there, we found, when I showed Vinnie and John this, they're like, that's impossible. That's a Scrivener's error. The parcel is here. That line goes through here. That line is there because that was the old railroad line. Nobody noticed it through all the planning commission, city council staff, nobody knows that property's split. So in theory, they can ask for a special project on this part of the property, but they can't up here, which makes no sense. So you
Under the
fix-
same Sidwell.
No, it's two different siblings. That's why it happened. So, and we looked at, when we did the master plan for 2022, we looked at Solaronics and we looked at Hellrow. And said we want to add those as beacons. They didn't get added, so.
So what I would, to answer your question, I would say we would need to rethink how we apply the special projects option. You know, we might limit it to certain areas in the city. We may say that it could be used in certain districts in the city, or a different approach. This approach was intended to try to allow the future land use plan to be implemented through that process. So I think you'd have to revisit it for sure.
Thank you.
Can we correct those errors? Is that legal?
Yeah, master plan revision, same process. We thought of that.
Isn't that what I just asked earlier?
We can do that.
No, I'm sorry. So there's a separate process for amending the zoning than there is for amending the master plan. To amend the zoning ordinance, like I said, it takes 15-day notice for publication of the planning commission. Then they recommend it to the council for the zoning, and then council has 2 readings, and then it's adopted. That's it. That's the process for fixing the zoning. If it's a change to the master plan, that's a whole different ballgame. That has to have a public hearing. First of all, it has to go for distribution. It has to be drafted. Then it has to be submitted to the surrounding communities, the county, SEMCOG, so on and so forth, for at least a 42 to 63-day review period before you have a public hearing at the planning commission. Then it gets recommended to the city council. So amending the master plan is a lot longer, more drawn-out process than amending the zoning.
I thought that's what Councilperson Salvi had said. You file it, and then the next day you're like, oh, shoot, something doesn't add up, we have to redo this. That's a different process.
That's exactly what I was asking.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
But I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and I tried to clarify if you were talking about the zoning.
So zoning, yes, so I want to rezone my lot into a special project. Is that a zoning request?
Yes. And that requires a public hearing with 15 days' notice at the planning commission. Then it would go to council for a first and a second reading. That's a zoning process. The master plan process, like I said, takes longer because it involves that distribution process to surrounding communities. That's a 42 to 63-day review process. That process doesn't apply to zoning. That only applies to the master plan.
Right, so the future, make this even weirder, what Patrick and I discovered was that on the zoning map, there is no such thing as a special project.
Right.
It's in the text that says the only place that the special projects are indicated are in the master plan. It's verbiage in the master plan. It's not there's no color for it. It's just a line. So in order to move that line, you have to go through the master plan.
Or, again, not to complicate it, change that sentence in the zoning ordinance.
There you go.
Instead of saying, the zoning ordinance could say, it has to follow the line in the master plan or other areas designated as appropriate by the city. I mean, so I'm sorry, I know this is confusing. There's a lot of different things at play here.
If you rezone a parcel, and now it's different than the master plan, does the law require that the master plan be amended? Or can you wait until your next 5 years?
If you rezone a property to something that is
Not in the master-
inconsistent with the master plan,
Correct.
Yeah.
You can do that. The master plan is just a document. That's all it is.
there's 2 schools of thought on that. One school of thought is you should go ahead and amend the master plan at the same time. The other school of thought is you can keep a list of those so that when the 5-year review process comes up, you can do them in a
Since
group.
it's only a guide, it would seem logical that you wait until the next time and catch.
There are people that are adamant that it should be updated at the time.
The challenge about rezoning a parcel that is not consistent with your master plan is you open yourself up to liability. So I think that a particular zone is better than what the master plan advocates. I've rezoned my property, now my neighbor thinks, you know what, I think that zone is better for me. It's inconsistent with the master plan and it's something that the city does not like. But what would be your basis for saying no to that person when you said yes to me? Because I wasn't consistent with the master plan either. So it opens you up to liability. Like John said, if at all you think somebody's request for rezoning is not consistent with the master plan, but is a good thing to do, you need to go and fix your master plan also.
Or take a risk, because it's not in the state law that you must.
Right, and again, Vidya's absolutely right, you want to follow your master plan, right? Whenever possible, when you're doing rezoning, when you're considering a rezoning, for sure, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So hypothetically, Randazzo project at the First and Walnut. So say that they come to us and they say, we don't want to do that project anymore, we want to do office. How is that going to be changed since we have it as multifamily?
So right now, they'd have to get a pure rezoning to office. And under the existing conditions, they would come in and just say, I don't want industrial anymore, I want office, and then go through site plan and rezoning.
Do the whole thing.
Traditional.
It's still industrial.
They can't do
No,
it
no,
right.
right. So right now, so they haven't fully come before us for that then, because we approved
As a
it.
special project, we did.
No, as a,
Yeah,
well,
they can't
right.
amend that special project to be anything other than what was approved by Planning Commission and City Council.
That wasn't a rezoning.
Correct.
Right.
It was a special project.
No, right, okay, that one came in as a special project. So hypothetically, if it wasn't a special project and came before us, like Overlook then, use Overlook, okay? Because that,
Special project.
yeah, see, so this is how special projects actually helped to a degree, but I think that they also stopped us because having them go through that process and then say, you know, then be a delayed, okay, now we're stuck, right? So I don't know, that's why I want the guidance for everybody to understand, like, so having so many of these and not, when you have the special project, if you didn't have the special project, that's where you would get stuck.
But most developers will be used to whatever the underlying zoning is, that's what I designed to. And if I change it, I've gotta either ask for another zoning classification or I gotta get an amended site plan, so
But
they
that
know
go-
going in.
But that goes to the bigger question, where do we see our community in 10 to 20 years, right?
That's the master plan, right?
Well, I know, but all we're doing is putting in residential everywhere. And that's where I think that,
So when it went through the Planning Commission City Council, we already had those discussions. We said,
No.
There's no office market, we don't want office, we don't, so the only thing left in Rochester, that's why they wrote the strong words about it's so desirable to be here, is residential, or maybe mixed use.
Yeah, that's
So
what we
you all
did.
made that decision already, that you don't want office, you want
I
mixed use, so not everybody voted for it, but that die is cast. The only way to change that is change your master.
well, no, that's why I think it's important that this is really looked at, because the climate can change,
And it
right?
does.
We still have people coming in, moving out, retail, everything. And then we have that whole entire Suave project area, right? That was all residential. If they were to come back to us and say they wanted to put in, small retail development office site down there, what process do they have to go through with the way it's currently stated?
Special project. Right now, they have nothing. It's just zone industrial.
Well, I know, so, I don't know, so then you're going to just put a label on it right now.
Nick, is that correct? It's still special projects.
It is.
So
Yeah, it
they
is
would
special
use special projects.
They would just come back and ask.
The problem is that the consultant retained had a bias against special projects.
Correct.
And
some former
it
council.
showed itself in this master plan.
It did.
They didn't like Picas, they didn't like special projects. We pushed back, they pushed. They wrote it, we didn't, and I'm afraid that their bias shows.
Oh, what,
So Vidya, I have a question. So I think maybe we all agree that we need to get the definitions and start the process, get those on the books. Is everybody? Okay, so I think that we need to do that.
So step one, we are good with. We bring all the district things back to the
Correct.
planning commission.
So I know we keep saying hypothetically tonight. So hypothetically, if we could do one meeting and go, we want that map, correct? That's the future,
Land use map,
and
yes.
that's the thing that the planning commission agreed on and the city council agreed on. So then if somebody wanted something different than that for zoning, would it be, they'd have to get different zoning, or would it be a special project?
If you adopted the future land use plan map as your zoning map.
Let's say it was that map.
That
right
is your
there.
zoning map. Somebody doesn't like what their current zoning is. They would, if they wanted to change the zoning on this, if they happen to be within the little dashed green lines within your special project boundary lines, they could still develop it under the special projects umbrella. If it is not within the special projects umbrella, they would have to request a master plan amendment first, and then a zoning change. So they will have to go through this whole process by themselves. Like, it would be a property owner initiated revisit of your master plan. So say I own a parcel which is adopted, and now on this, it is zone office. I actually want it to be single-family residential, but the future land use plan map also says it's office, so I'm zoned according to the future land. If I want to change residential, I will now have to petition you to change your master plan to make my parcel residential. And once you amend your master plan, then I will request a rezoning back to residential. It's
Right, so we could do it all at once and just have that map, or we call it organically.
Organic,
Where
bits and pieces.
each person comes
Yes.
one at a time, and we do our zoning based on developers coming to us with different projects.
Yeah, you're basically leaving the power out to the developers to come when they
No, you're not.
feel up to it.
No, you're not.
They will be
We
driving
still
that
have
bus as to when they're coming to you.
But in theory, we have the option to say no.
You do, yep. It would be hard to say no if it was consistent with your master plan. The thing I'm more concerned about is people investing in their current zoning, which is inconsistent with this map. That's my concern.
But if somebody wanted a different thing, they could do it under the organic way. But then, in theory, planning commission or council would have to say no if they didn't want it.
Right, if it was inconsistent with the master plan, they'd have to say no. Yep.
And they would have to say no, or they could say no?
They'd have to make a very compelling case for you to deviate from your master plan. There'd have to be a real definitive reason why.
What's the group of three thing?
A master plan is technically called as a guiding document. It is designed after countless input from your own citizens.
Yeah.
So if you're going to deviate from the vision of your own citizens, there has to be a compelling argument for why you want to deviate. There has to have been some dramatic change in society, living conditions, or the site itself that has necessitated you actually deviating from what you had set as your vision.
But in theory, right now, that map is not what we have.
No,
Correct. We are the previous one.
Yes. Your zoning map is that is what you want to, you aspire.
The other one is the legal.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Thank you. You said earlier on video that we should do this in groups of 3, get all zoning districts on the books. And as I've just made a list as I'm going through here, do we have to go through, we already have R1 through 5, we have R2.
Yeah, that's not changing.
Right.
Those can all go in the
So the only ones really we need to do are Downtown Edge 1,
Yes.
2, and Transition District.
Correct.
So
As
that's a
one
group
group,
of
yes.
3. What other ones do we have to do?
We can do the
Rewrite of.
yes, OTR, the Office Technology Research, and the LAMISO, which is the Light Manufacturing Industry.
So that's really all we have to do to get them on?
Just
Get
few.
the
I think
master
in
plan
3
aligned with the
meetings-
I
think in 3 meetings, you should be able to get all the districts.
So how,
Master plan,
does that then, do what the mayor just said? Then we would be able to adopt the new zoning map after we did those groups of
Yes.
3?
Yeah.
So we do the groups of 3 and then adopt the zoning map, or adopt the zoning map, then do the groups of 3?
No, you have to first get the text on your
The
books.
text,
before you change the
but then we can adopt that map or not and do it organically is what,
Yeah.
there's 2 options they offer.
Is there any problem with expanding the special projects district areas, basically what Ann's talking about, into these areas that we know are gonna redevelop?
That's the cleanest, easiest.
I think
Because
it's,
it gives us so much more latitude.
and control, we want to be the one that, so it's not the developer controlling anything, it's us. I mean, that, and to me, that's the most important piece. We have, I think it would make us, and it'll look better for the developer too, because we're going to be more
We're not
negotiable
compelled
with them.
To agree to a special
Correct.
project, we're not compelled.
Well, how
It
often have you
also
disagreed?
gives some encouraging opportunity to a developer that's creative and has an idea that maybe we haven't thought of, that we could always say no to, but at least we'll hear some things that maybe isn't in our plan that might be good for us.
Right, and you don't know, because the climate is changing so much, I'd hate to box us out of anything good like that.
Whereas if they face an organic rezoning, that might be a daunting task, and they just say, no.
Well, yeah, that's totally different.
So for clarity, once a developer comes in, gets a special project approved, how many months do they have to act on said project before it expires and they have to come before us again for another special project?
Yeah, it's 1 year, and if they're in engineering, we hold it.
Right.
And the second year, they'd have to come back and they have to ask for an extension if they're not in engineering or building review.
Like
So-
if something
1 year.
happened.
So are there any special projects that are hanging that could move forward, or have they all timed out?
Yeah, one person thinks they have one, we don't think they do, so the answer is no, there aren't.
Yes,
Well, Randazzo, but he's in engineering and Grunfeld and stuff. He's the only one hanging.
So concurrently with working through the new zoning ordinances and adopting the language, are we also going to be modifying the master plan for like the cleanup that was mentioned? Nick, you mentioned there was some sloppiness, some of the numbers. You know, we
Yes.
said 10% lot cover, or 10%
We- we
setbacks.
informed
10%
them.
lot covers. We're gonna do all that too? Okay.
So those are the fine details that are there in your master plan. When it says, like Patrick mentioned, you get 100% lot coverage, but a 10-foot green belt, well, it's not going to happen. So,
Expanding special projects is what process?
just 1 second, I will just answer Commissioner King's and then I have your answer. So what we can do is we adopt, that is a guide. That portion of your ordinance is a guide. So we will make sure when we adopt the zoning ordinance text, it is not so contradictory, self-contradictory in it.
So we're not gonna amend the master plan then?
Not at this time. You can write those up and amend it at the 5-year revisit.
It's a
of the
guide.
master
It's a
plan.
guide.
It's a guide.
Okay.
You don't have
But
to immediately.
we've also talked about changing the special project designation, like there's an error because it splits one
Yes.
one
So
parcel.
John had a suggestion of how it is done. Instead of going into your master plan and fixing it, which once again is a long process,
The wording.
the special projects is referenced in your zoning ordinance.
So it's a zoning.
So you
Okay.
can
Zoning
change the zoning
change.
ordinance,
Zoning
say follow
change.
the
Zoning
boundaries
change.
as shown in the master plan or as deemed appropriate by the city.
That solves a lot.
That one
Yes.
clause will give you
Yes.
the ability to shift that line and give more flexibility, like Ms. Peterson said.
I was just asking, Commissioner here, there's on this map, it says special project, there's like white there, and you were suggesting we expand the special project zone. Where is the special project zone on this map?
So,
And how do you
so
expand
this.
it?
It's the green dotted lines.
Just one big,
To see, I actually, if you would look here.
Okay.
Inside those are the special.
He's referring to on the key, it's a color white.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, there's green around
Because
it.
it's the dotted edge.
There's green around it.
It's a neon green, it's very difficult.
Not white.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we're looking to the planning commissioner's chairman's suggestion, we want to expand that zone that would accomplish what council
Does it
member.
have to be contiguous, or can it be?
No, actually,
Okay, that's good to know.
So question I have is, we can have districts and we can have special project as like an overlay. So we can have both,
Yes,
right?
because
Okay.
the special projects
I
will give
think
you
that
creativity.
gives us both.
Yeah. Gives us a very wide latitude.
Right, detailed direction from the master plan,
Special
but
things.
flexibility for creativity.
And the ability to say no.
And
Right.
which, my question is.
Mr. Commissioner,
Marilyn?
at the risk of sounding silly, and I'm not trying to be, make fun here, is it possible to have the whole area, like, just the whole city bordered out?
Rochester is a special project.
Yeah,
So
Instead of
I would say most communities do it that way.
right.
They don't have a boundary where you can do them. They have other provisions that say you can do a special project, and other communities are called planned unit developments. You can do them in any non-residential district, with a parcel size of 5 acres or more. They have specific eligibility standards like that, that
I
could
think
guide where it goes.
Oh, yeah.
it sounds a lot more simple to follow through versus having all these diagram and dotted lines throughout the
Can't even
city.
read.
Yeah, all right.
Have we defined a special project? Is it?
I mean, I think of a PUD in most communities, and it's.
Which is what I
it's
said.
There's a whole text of 18 things you have to follow to be a special project.
So yes, we have
It
defined
has
it.
a definition of.
There's a whole section.
Maryland?
So what was Beckett's bias? Why didn't they want a special project?
They're from Ann Arbor as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know.
Dennis.
Ask the mayor.
They felt, they were purists. They did not want, they wanted the city to have to plan on zoning, adopt the zoning, and deal with people organically as they came in. They didn't want any
didn't
any
believe in
planned unit
special
developments or handshake zoning. They didn't want that kind of stuff.
So I have another question. So how often do people say no? I've been here for years. I have not seen, honestly, very many no's.
Yeah.
Have we
I-
said no?
No, because we hadn't had that many of them.
I'm just saying, how hard, I mean, you have to set yourself up for saying no, and I just
There have been
wonder
no votes,
how
but they've
easy that
passed.
is.
But-
I haven't seen it so far, to be honest. I haven't, well, I'm just saying.
But I think, I
am from Ann Arbor.
I think with the special projects, it's
Several times.
it's less often a no than it is either make these changes, make these, it's a negotiation, And then maybe in the end, it's a yes vote as long as you do these things.
Okay.
And the developer might be like, I'm not gonna do those things, so it's effectively a no
Or
vote.
the Randazzo was a no vote first, and then
It was a
But the
yes.
council-
it was a
Councilperson
yes
Trent.
second after there was change.
I know.
They're
I was
usually
there.
vetted out pretty well before they get to the
Correct.
planning commission.
Planning Commission has heard concept plans from developers wanting to go special projects, and the Planning Commission pretty much said, no, this is not.
Right. Numerous instances, yes.
120 South
We've
Main
said
has
no.
come in
Yes.
5
So it
times.
never
Correct.
made it. It
I
never
see.
made it to the
So-
point.
That's
a public
120
Okay.
South Main has come in 5 times with Design House,
Yeah.
asking for special projects. That's way more than any of our existing districts, and we said no, get away. So the answer is we said no 5
So we're
times.
chasing
Okay.
them away at the earlier
And
stage.
Solaronics got said no to
To the
an indoor
axe
dark
throwing.
park, an
Yeah.
axe throwing, a bar.
I understand.
That was
I know
told
it's
no to.
so
And they're not even a special project. They just wanted a rezoning. They thought they were special projects.
Just trying to understand how far you get with these special projects and what you
When
can
you
do
deny
now.
a zoning, though, you have to have specific points as to why you design it or deny it. I don't think you're under the.
Special
under the-
projects, you don't have
under
to.
the
You don't
bound
have
of
to?
the special project, I think it's
Really?
It's
No.
up to the
Right.
individual
Okay.
commissioner.
No, we
Well-
would advise strongly that any application that you deny, you have a strong findings of facts
We
as
do
to
that, but it's
why.
not like a rezoning where we're under the hook. It's already rezoned something, or,
I see.
it's not as serious a thing as denying a zoning.
Sarah?
I just wanted to point out, there was talk of changing the special projects from, land designated map to, non-residential, basically any zone side from non-residential, maybe a size requirement. Solaronics does fall within that.
It does.
So, just
I would
want that out
Putting the
there.
sign out that we're open for development.
Oh, I'm not for that.
There's no question.
I would not.
Special
I would vote
projects
for
are
that.
just that. It is giving, a project is asking for special concessions from you. That doesn't necessarily mean the bar is being lowered. It means in all other respects, the city is really raising the bar. Why do you think you're worthy of getting such a designation?
Yeah.
And it's not merely saying, I'm just going to take an industrial brownfield site and I'm going to clean up the brownfield site.
Open
That
the
is
city up
just
to
not
that.
enough. What more are you doing and contributing back to the city? And yes, there is always the option when you deny a special project, you absolutely can do that. The reason why we always stress on findings of fact, be it a zoning board of appeals, or a special land use or a rezoning, so that you're treating every applicant fairly. Your decision-making on one project does not come into question when you deny another one or approve another one.
No, I just wanted to state that because, they're asking for a rezoning, but also not meeting the zoning requirements of that rezoning.
So you led into something. So there is something that we never had until a few years ago called a conditional rezone.
Right.
So that's what they're asking for. They're not asking for RM2. They're asking for RM2 with a conditional rezone, where they're gonna ask to make a development agreement and lock it into a specific site plan. That is not zoning to RM2.
No, but it's RM2 with different heights.
That's
They
what they're
weren't,
asking
they weren't,
for.
and they
That's what
weren't
they're
meeting the
asking
setback. One of their corners wasn't gonna meet the
for. One of them,
setbacks,
but now,
right?
now you have to see the rule, but still, that is
Okay,
correct.
I-
They're asking
but
for.
I would
What we
not.
saw before,
Right, and that's why
Yeah.
they were rejected.
But they're, not to get into specifics, but they're asking for a rezone for something that's different than our.
That's correct, in the master plan.
Right, it's
Yeah.
totally different.
Yep. It's not totally different.
We're not saying we're gonna make this whole special projects right now in this meeting.
It would
Is
then be
that-
a special
That's not what's
project.
happening, right?
That can't be a
And it would
special.
follow those.
I mean-
Why is that?
It's not designated now. You'd have to make. that a
Okay.
special.
Right, it all comes
Does
later.
everyone know that?
Yeah, I think everybody knows, right, Solaronics is not a special project.
Right,
It's supposed to
correct.
And
be.
we're not going to
It
make
didn't
it
get in the
one.
master.
Didn't get in.
I don't
Right.
like, okay.
So right now, it can't be.
Correct. So I was thinking it was after.
So we can't make the whole city
Can I
a
ask
special project.
David,
Yeah, we can.
you've been on this planning commission for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
Good time now.
Do you think, what's your sense of this, doing the whole city as a special project? And you're an architect.
I think with the exception of residential, I think it's okay, because it still goes through the same vetting process. Is it a good, worthy idea of the space you're trying to use something?
So any existing single family or multiple?
Excluding family districts.
Okay.
Or
Other properties, I
multifamily?
think, if there's a worthy idea that someone wants to bring forward, we could listen to it. That's
Is it
what,
more
my
than
opinion.
25 years you've been on there?
I don't really remember it. I stopped at 25, so maybe that gives you an idea.
Wait a minute.
I would, yeah.
David was on the planning commission
You first got it.
when I was first elected to city council.
So you're second in seniority.
Exactly.
Wow.
You've
So
been on,
my-
you've been on the council for a while then.
20 years.
You were here, you were the chairman when I first got here.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Maryland and I, Maryland and,
Ann was on the planning commission for a while.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Okay, so my understanding is that we have, even though you're saying with special projects, we have more control, it sounds like if it's harder to get through a rezoning, we would have more control by experts coming in and saying that this is what we should do, and we have special projects on there. I think it's a big jump to just blanket say, we'll just make it all special projects. I would say that's a big step. It's got a lot more
It
questions.
would be the whole city, that
Well,
was extreme, but
well-
right now, if you look at the map, it's basically all the commercial.
Right, well, I mean, there is special projects there, but to jump from there and then to say that, trying to get through that, to me, is a big step.
So, when we say the whole city is a special project, all we're really saying is that you could apply for a special project on any commercially designated piece of property in the city that's at least 5 acres in size, or, for example.
We don't have any five.
Right, right.
For example.
Yeah, I'm like,
Right, I was gonna say, where's that at?
Yeah, for instance,
Or you could apply other standards to tighten it up as well. You could say in these commercial districts or whatever. So you can pick and choose where it applies.
okay, so just for instance, let's use Solaronics as an example. It's asking for a rezone. If it was a special project, would that come before council?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You have final say.
That's the purpose of doing more special projects, so not only do they vet it, we have that opportunity to vet it, to make sure it answers all those questions like you brought up earlier. And then we've already had, like the chief was in here, he would talk about whether or not it was too much density, or if the water was going to be an issue, or the sewer. So he would actually tell us that as well, so then we could make that good educated decision of moving it forward or not. And it's going to come from a recommendation or not from what the planning commission says.
Then why would you have all these areas if all the
It
things,
should make you feel better that it used to be, it went planning commission recommended to city council, who recommended back to city planning commission, who made the final answer. And when the city council thought about it, you're the elected ones, you wanted to have the
So-
responsibility
I know.
to the people.
So for
it's back-
example.
so what weight does that map have if it's, everything could be a special project, but
Basically,
all commercial, no matter what zoning, we're gonna go through all these 18 districts that, Ann's talking about, and in the end, it's like, well, it's a special project, and so it all becomes a special project, so it seems like a lot of work to go through this. It means it's meaningless.
No, let me clarify. So if someone came in for a special project to do a multiple family project in the middle of your office research district, let's say, you would say, no, it's inconsistent not only with the land use plan, the future land use plan, but all of the goals and objectives that we have about preserving this area for, research and development districts. So you still have to evaluate every single request with the goals and objectives of the master plan.
it's not a yes, it's just an opportunity.
Well-
And I would also say, with respect to the special projects being easier than a rezoning, it's really not. a developer goes into that process not knowing what he's gonna get, you know, he or she's gonna get. It's a negotiation back and forth. And the planning commission has sent developers back to the drawing board countless numbers of times. So that's probably why Beckett and Rader didn't like them, because it's zoning by negotiation.
So, yeah, okay, one more question then. So, but I would say that then this zoning map would be a baseline to say, wouldn't that carry more weight? I mean, if you follow the zoning that we codify in these last few, then they would, like, if it's mixed use and somebody wants to do something else, then that would be legal and okay, and they follow all those guidelines.
Yeah.
And then they want to do a special project, that's where it's outside of.
Right, and usually the special project would probably be something like, we want to add an extra floor. We want to add extra height. It's not, we want to, you know, apply for a special project to put an auto dealership right in the, you know, you know, yeah.
Okay.
No, just for example, the Riverfront Place Apartments, the first time it came before Planning Commission, when they did the sustainability analysis, they had 8 out of 20 points, and the Planning Commission said, we don't even want to look at this. It went back, I think it came back 5 times before they dragged their point all the way from 8 till 16, and that included planting of several hundred more trees, pulling the building back, cutting off portions of the building, putting brick all over several sections, creating a pocket park, because each one of those improvements earned them 1 point. So they had to invest a lot.
I remember that.
It took about 3 years for them to actually get to a point where the Planning Commission said, okay, this is now where we think it is acceptable.
Yeah, and you had a comment?
I did, and to these points about the special projects, so the way I see it, because the way it's happened in the past, that lets us really control what comes in. And it's better than just what they're sitting there as zoning, whatever it might be, because what if, you know, if this is supposed to be a 10 to 20-year lookout, we don't have to go back and question any of this here. If it fits in the guidelines of the special projects, it will be there, and we will be able to use that to change one of the commercial zoning to maybe something better. And that will work for the community better.
Well, then why don't you just change the zoning, isn't it?
Well, because that one, I just think that, see, what we missed out on, and because of all the contention before on special projects, it left us to where we got rid of that. And that was our way of the city, the whole city. When you think about planning commission and city council making a decision on a development coming in, to me, it holds more value that for the residents too, that we really vetted this to either come in or be rejected. So.
But they're still gonna have the underlining zoning.
Oh,
for the
of
proposed
course.
land use,
Right,
right?
right.
So they could do something under that, and we have no, as long as they meet it, we know.
Correct. This is if they wanted to go above and beyond. We can use Lenore Dental Office as the example. That was a special project right there in Walnut. And that morphed into, you know, just all kinds of different things. As long as the city has a process in place fully, it should not be a problem at all for what anyone is expecting. And it's not a pay-as-you-pay or anything like that, or whatever people were talking about. It's really, you're letting them come in and do something different than the norm to bring value to our city, and we want them to bring some sort of value.
Yeah, let's never use Lenore.
Well, no, but that was,
I was gonna say,
I'm still thinking of 8-hour depositions.
But it was.
One of the problems with special projects that people have pointed out is the public benefit part of it.
Right, and there's not
And
one.
that really needs to be defined.
Well, that is what triggered your whole sustainability study.
Yeah.
The public benefit, what is this public benefit? And that is what resulted in
But
us
then
creating the whole
when these people would come
sustainability.
forward, well, we're gonna put in crossings, and, well, is that, you know.
Enough. Is
that
that enough?
And to be consistent, you know, I think we need to agree on something more specific than this nebulous concept that's out there.
I would
Good
agree
point.
with that.
Rich?
I would agree with that.
On the future use map, it shows in green that there's a number of recreational and open spaces that are defined in the city. Now, there are no public parks east of Letica. However, there's a considerable amount of open space. Should that be defined on this future use map?
So we talked about that. At the time, the planning commission said it's private property, we're not gonna do that, it's only for public green space.
Right.
I agree, we should get credit for all that green space that are in the suburbs, but we didn't in this plan. Beckett So it should just be the public land.
Well, I hear what you're saying. However, it's open space as defined by deed. Does that change the scenario?
I think it should be on the plan, personally.
Because
It's a different district.
Yeah, but it's
Make it a
not
different
for all
color.
of public use, though.
That's not necessarily true.
Within the HOA, that public community is for use.
Not true. Because
Really?
there are areas that are deemed, well, it's a contradiction. They're labeled as private, but it's a public use.
Right.
Like the sidewalks that go around Parkdale, Runyon, and DeQuinder.
But it would have been part of their planned development when they did that back then to keep it as an open space.
It is defined as open space, but those are in essence public,
But the
walk-
pools,
private
the tennis
sidewalks.
courts, all that are not open to the public.
That's true.
Right.
So, I guess I think we're getting towards the end of the time, so I think, this was about process, so I think we all agree we want to move forward with the district definitions and get those there. So what's people's feeling? We want to have our consultants bring us a citywide zoning map? We want to do it organically? What's the next step that we want our consultants and planners to bring to us, I guess is a way to kind of try to wrap this up. We said we'd be out of here by 8.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys represent a number of communities and this is not an uncommon process where master plan changes and then zoning's out of whack with the master plan, but is it common that people go to sleep one night, wake up the next morning, and property across the whole city's been rezoned? I can't imagine it is, but maybe it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure.
In
it
this
happens.
case, you got a lot.
It happens, but,
There's meetings and
Yeah.
hearings and all that.
Understood.
Right.
But yes,
it's
en
done.
masse changing the zoning of the city, it's done. They've done it.
But, okay,
And notice has to be given.
Yes.
understood.
Not to individual property owners. When a city initiates the rezoning for citywide, it is published in all the newspapers, websites, it's blanketed public information, but the notice is not issued to each one of the 13,000
Right, so do
or
we want to
14,000
instigate it as city and planning commission, or do we want to organically let the developers come to us? I get, that's kind of the next step
Okay.
that we need to look at, Councilman Albrecht.
I'd go back to what I brought up a little while ago with video, that we should have the planning, our consultants work with the planning commission to get these zoning districts assigned to meet the master plan. I'm talking about downtown edge 1, 2,
Definition.
transition district,
Yeah.
public and quasi-public, and OTR. Go through that process. Once that's done, now our zoning matches our master plan, which is what you said was option 2. Then we will now have a new zoning map that matches what's in the matches the zoning districts. I would then take, as the planning commission chairman said, I would want to define a little bit more about what the give back is for special projects, so that, I like the fact that I remember going through the Riverfront Place or the Randazzo project, that they kept getting pushed back because they were too big, or they were going to do this all at once, and the planning commission, then even us, when it came to us, they came with their plans a few times before we said yes. So I like the process of special projects, I don't know if there's ever been a no. I know there's been a series of no's before they've gotten to
Before
a
they get
yes.
to the yes.
So I like that process. So I would propose that we do the districts, as Vidya said, adopt the new zoning map, and then clearly define a little bit more of the special project process.
So we have the last part that's missing is, can we put the words in the zoning that says, the peaks are what's there, or as determined to be relevant, whatever.
Yes, I think the way we can address the special projects concern, Ms. Peterson and Chairman McGee brought up, is we amend the zoning ordinance to say that the special project boundaries shall follow what is in the master plan or as deemed appropriate by the city, and then we put in a certain definition for what the public benefit is and tie it into our sustainability study, because I keep coming back
Right.
to the
So
sustainability
any
study.
property could.
Right,
Yes.
any
Consider.
property,
Yes.
correct.
Yes,
Tell them.
and you can say that,
Yes.
no, I don't think this is even something we want to consider under
Correct.
special projects. You
So
could do that.
you can say no if you,
Yes,
even though you're saying
absolutely.
you're gonna draw all those little green
You're
fluorescent
just giving
lines,
yourself
saying
an
yes, and
opportunity.
then you're
Yep.
gonna say no.
Flexibility.
Oh, yeah.
It's
But
just
is that
giving you
in the-
flexibility
The
to
city
say,
council
I'm
can
willing to
always
even
say no.
consider
Always
this.
say no.
But we could say, no, we're not willing. Is that in the?
Yes, you
Yes,
can.
because
Or
I'm
always.
not,
Not even
I'm
bother with it.
concerned about
No,
this.
you absolutely
I am
can say no.
completely
Takes it away.
concerned.
No.
All right, so Marilyn, like 15 years ago, nothing came to the city council, and we changed it at a special project, because where that came
That's
from
significant.
was the Royal Park project. The
Yep.
Royal Park Hotel never came to the city council. 'Cause I was on the city council, people asked, well, well, I'll see how, when it gets to the council, it never came.
I see.
Because
Okay.
it didn't have to.
All right, well, I
We
guess I'll
thought
trust
that
you
was-
guys.
But not, that wasn't.
You're part of this.
Final comments from anybody, Ann?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mayor. So two things. One, as far as the DDA boundary lines, has there been any discussion at all of expanding those?
No.
No?
Well, we talked about it at the planning commission some time ago.
there
There
was
was
a
a
little
commissioner at the
Yeah.
time who violently objected, and a former.
Yes,
We
yes,
know
we
who
know,
that-
we know who it
They're
is.
both gone.
Yes.
Well, no, I just think for the viability of the downtown, I
Yeah.
think that is something that should be considered in the future.
I've covered Hill.
I know you are. Yeah,
Yeah.
And then my other,
State law.
my other question, I guess, for administration is, when looking at the single-family residential description of the development standards, I mean, we're going to, on a lot 50 to 80 feet minimum lot, the area can go all the way up to 15,000 square feet. But it was 9,600 square feet. So, yeah, I know, well, it's just on this page here, so I'm just wondering, like, what changed, because that's a significant square footage.
Did they change that?
I don't know that we changed anything. I don't know if you really.
But this is the one you guys just last gave us, so.
Are you kind of good with?
Yes, just to get clarification on the direction. So the next step will be to clean up all those districts and bring it back before the planning commission and city council, so we can have all the districts in place. We fix the zoning ordinance to address the PICAs, the fact that we give more flexibility and also define the public benefit and tie it into the sustainability study. I'm still not clear how you want to adopt, Chairperson, Councilmember Albright said that he wanted the zoning map adopted as a
Yeah,
whole.
so
Is that what you want?
Why don't you start that process of
Okay.
bringing that map forward? I mean, you don't have to, but at least
We can do that.
you can do that. Is that, everybody knows? the
Yeah, and
process?
so, Mayor, my other question would be then, and while we're doing this, of course, the second option, which is organically, can still take place.
Yes, it can.
Okay.
While we are doing the big thing, if somebody doesn't want to wait for as long as it's going to take, we have the districts in the book, somebody can come and ask, I would like to rezone it while you're doing the
So
rest.
I'll just ask, is there any comment from, brief comment, public comment? No? All right, any further comments?
You're gonna look at a statement on special projects that can be added to the zoning. As part of that.
All right, you guys, I know that's mind-numbing stuff. And I appreciate your
That's
patience.
exciting,
Good.
Good meeting, good to
Very
get
good,
this
very
together.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
See ya, take care of yourself, recover.